whenever you've been hurt or disappointed, that's time for you to have a difficult conversation with the person who hurt or disappointed you. But one thing I've discovered is that typically when we've been hurt or disappointed by others, is that that's when it's hardest for us to have a conversation with them. And so one of the things that I've found that has helped me along the way is having a roadmap to learn how to have a difficult conversation with another person. And I'm going to share that with you here this afternoon. And I'd like to share with you a process called the Xyz Statement. And by the way, you can download this. There's a link in the show notes where you can download this PDF. And it's always good to kind of like to think about this and rehearse it, and to at least to have that framework in mind when you're having a difficult conversation with another person. And so the very first thing, however, is that when you're having a difficult conversation with another person, the very first thing that you need to remember is your opener. And I think that it's always valuable to touch on a couple things when you approach somebody who has disappointed you or hurt you. Number one is that you need to avoid a harsh start. And instead of coming at the person with accusations, which is only going to create defensiveness in them, that instead, I think that's beneficial to approach the person with affirming the value of the relationship. So in other words, saying something like, my relationship with you is important to me. And number two, the second thing to do on this is that I'd like to talk with you about a problem that I'm having. Now, that's really pivotal and key, because instead of making it about the other person, whenever you are carrying a resentment or whenever you're carrying a hurt as a consequence of what someone else has done, that's your problem. And so what you want to do is talk with them about that problem that you're having. There are 3 steps, or at least 4 steps, to an effective XYZ statement. And of course, is that you start off with the X. And the X is just simply this, is that the X is when. Now, you have to be careful when you do that, is because instead of being accusatory, you need to think in terms of a reporter and not a blamer. So in other words, is that when you made fun of me in front of our friends last night, you see, there's no blame. It's just reporting. Or when you called me out in that meeting, and actually that becomes evaluative. When you made the comments that you did during our meeting. Okay, and so it's just initially you want to describe what that person did, and then that the why portion of this is that you talk about. So there's the when you did this, then. So when you made fun of me in front of our friends last night, then I begin to wonder how important I am to you, or whatever it is. I don't know. You got to figure out that stuff yourself. But when they did the X, the Y is the impact that it has on you. Then I begin to wonder, about my place on the team, or I begin to wonder about if I'm valued as an employee. I begin to wonder about this or whatever. There's always an impact when someone does something that hurts or offends you. You have to think in terms of the impact, and that's the why portion of the statement. And so then that you move into the Z portion of the statement. So when you made fun of me in front of our friends the other night, then I began to question how important I am to you. That's the why part. And then the Z, and I felt disrespected, or I felt devalued. I felt humiliated. This is so important to understand this clearly, is that when you get to the Z portion, is that you always, you share how you felt. So we start off with the when in the X, and then the then in the Y, and the Z is the feelings, and feelings can always be described by one word. And if you're using a lot of words, I feel like crap or whatever else, that's not a feeling. Is that or you make me feel, that's not, all you're going to do is you're inviting trouble. Is that there's a whole, and what I need to do is I need to post my feelings list, because a lot of people have a hard time getting in touch with what they're truly feeling. But a feeling is always one word. So then we move on to the XYZ when we're talking about the XYZ plus statement here. And then the plus is where we add on your expectations, or at least what you need from the other person. So when you made fun of me in front of our friends the other night, then I began to question how important I am to you, and I felt humiliated. What I need from you is to give pause when your comments are about me and the impact that they're going to have on me. Something like that. I don't know. I'm just shooting off. I'm just going off the top of my head, shooting from the hip or whatever. So, but here's what I'm telling, and I know this much because I've been doing this a long time, and I've watched how this works. Is that you can have the perfectly crafted XYZ statement, and almost invariably it gets derailed because the person that you're talking with is that oftentimes that they have a hard time hearing hard truths from people. And when you're dealing with a person who has a hard time hearing hard truths from another person, then you need to learn how to manage it when they derail the conversation. And the key to that, by the way, is power listening. And so in other words, you go into the conversation wanting to share what's on your heart, but then you get the pushback from the other person. Is that what you need to do? It's kind of a judo technique. Instead of coming at them with karate, is that you use their force against them. And you say something like, well, that I want to hear more about that. I want to hear how you feel. That tell me more. And so I can see your point of view, and tease that out a little bit when you're talking to the other person. I know it's difficult because you're going into the meeting with the expectation that they're going to hear and validate what's going on with you. They're going to flip it around and come back at you with something. And so in order to regain proper control of the conversation, you're going to have to let them it's like what Muhammad Ali did with George Foreman. It's the rope-a-dope technique. That he just leaned up against the rope, and he covered up, and he let George Foreman just punch himself out. And so you just let the other person, and I'm not talking about physically, okay? You just let them vent Tell me more. What's that like for you? I want to hear more about this. I need to understand how you're feeling. And once the temperature drops in that conversation, then that's the time to flip it around once again, test the waters once again, and say something like this. I think that I understand how you're feeling. Let me see if I got it, and you can repeat back to them or whatever else that you need to say. And say, and is that correct? And then move on from there and say, I would like to return to what I was talking about. When you did this, then here's the impact that had on me. And I felt, and what I really need from you is, and you state your needs and expectations there. If, however, at that time, the other person is still defensive and giving you a bunch of pushback and is unresponsive to and not ready to listen to where you're at, then that's when you need to know when to table the conversation for now. You say, I can see that right now it's not a good time for us to have this conversation. And so I'm going to step back from it, but I would like to revisit it here soon. And so I'm going to circle back and check in with you a little bit later on, maybe not the same day, obviously, but I'm going to check with you later on, and because my relationship with you is important to me, and I would like for us to work this out in a way that we both can feel good about how we're working through this problem. And so I just wanted to share that with you here today, is about how to have a difficult conversation when you've been hurt or offended or you're disappointed with someone, because it's always going to happen. It's going to happen in your marriages. It's going to happen with your kids. It's going to happen with your parents. It's going to happen with your loved ones. It's going to happen on the job. It's going to happen with your friends. And learning how to master the art of having a difficult conversation is going to help you to have healthier and happier relationships. Well, that's it for now. I hope to see you next time. And by the way, make sure you download that handout, because that'll be a helpful guide for you. Next time around, it's your turn to have a difficult conversation. All right. Bye-bye.